To oh, okay, wait, recording in progress. Okay, so aloha, welcome everybody to our second session of our Kīpaepae Foundations. I'm going to share my screen so that we all on the same place. Okay, so welcome, and I just wanted to let you know that for those of you, this might be your first time or might not be familiar with us. I am Hōkūlani Holt, and I am here at Maui, UH Maui College, and I am the director of Hikina, which is a scholarship program for Native Hawaiian students interested in STEM and Hawaiian Studies, as well as the coordinator for Hawaii Papaukeau, which is the program, system-wide program that much of this comes from. This is a second in a 6-part series, and I hope you'll join us for all 6. At the end of the presentation, we will share the other classes that will be offered, and know that 3 will be this semester and 3 will be next semester. But at the end of this presentation, we will go ahead and have a slide where you can see all of those offerings. Along with me today is Luana Kawaʻa, and I'd like to turn the time over to her.
Mahalo, hoku, aloha mai kākou. Thank you so much for having us, and thank you, Hoku, for starting us off. I am Luana Kawaʻa, as Hoku said. I'm the director of Paʻū, which is the TRIO Student Support Services program at our Maui campus. And then I also am a part-time lecturer as well. At Paʻū, we get to work with our underserved students, help them get into college and be successful. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity that I have to work with these amazing students, one of which is in our presentation today, joining us. Tiki, she works at Paʻū now, but started off as a student and is doing fabulous. She's really our role model for all of the rest of our students as well. So so I'm grateful to be able to do that good work there at Paʻū. I'm also a kumu hula here on the island of Maui, and went through that traditional uniki process under Hōkūlani. So we definitely have a very close bond and connection, and I am forever grateful to her. She will always be my kumu. Although we're co-presenting, she will always be kumu nui, the big kumu that you got to listen to. So mahalo. I'm gonna maybe we go to the next slide, Hoku, to the agenda. Okay, maikai. So we'll start off with some historical background about Oli. I'll also be introducing Oli styles and some of the techniques that we use. Hoku will talk more about Oli in protocol and what the function is of Oli when we use it in Kīpaepae and in protocol in general. And then I'm going to introduce the chant that we're learning today, which is Oli Aloha, a welcoming, a greeting chant. We'll have time for Ninau for any questions that you have. And then we'll introduce what are the upcoming sessions, session 3 through 6, and those dates as well. So I think we're makoko, we're ready to ho'omaka, and I'll let Hoku do the historical background.
Mahalo, Luana. And you know, we it'll be a little fluid between Luana and I, and if something pops into our head and she wants to give a little more background, it's going to be like that. So I'll begin by saying that Oli was an everyday occurrence in Hawaiian life. In the morning, they did chants like to awaken. They did chants for the akua that they saw around them. Today, I do a chant called E Hiʻiaka paha oi e hiʻielo every morning, and e kane ho'alani, which is to greet the sun every morning. And there are chants for within the family, like a mele ho'ala, which is a chant to awaken someone, a child, your household maybe. So there were chants that occurred every day. There were chants that occurred for your work day, like the pule mahi'ai. E ka ne lo no na akua mahi'ai ho'ola I ka aina. A chant like that asks for kane and lono to awaken the land, to bring the land life. So your work day might begin with pule mahi'ai. For cultural practices such as hula, hula has a lot of chants that go along with everything that they do. How to get in the door, how to ask for permission, and I'll talk a little bit about those kinds of things after. But cultural practices often had chants to accompany them as well. Then there are chants for Mauliola. There's chant for help, for the ali'i, or for the rulers of the land, for the people, and for the aina, to bring health to everything and well-being. And then there are chants to say goodbye to the day and to welcome the moon into your life as well. Oli was how they recognized and spoke to the entities that impacted and surrounded their lives. The rain, the clouds, the sea, the plants, the trees, the wind, and the aina itself. They recognized and petitioned all of them for assistance. In Christian belief system, it might be equated with God is everywhere. In Hawaiian belief system, this everywhere had specific names, characteristics, needs, and requirements. So they also saw the living entities that brought goodness into their life around them all the time. Today, many of these same reasons exist. The ceremonies and rituals needed for daily life, as well as for special occasions, are a part of many people's lives. And the need for Oli to accompany these activities and behaviors continue to this very day. We all know that Oli, well, we may or may not all know, we all know, but we should know that Oli is not reserved for kumu hula or specific cultural practitioners only. Oli, we believe and we know, is for everyone.
Mike, mahalo, Hoku. Thank you so much. That's a great intro into what we're going to be talking about today. And I really want to emphasize the point that Hoku made at the very end, which is that Oli is for everyone, and it was part of everyday life. And as such, we want to become, we want to hear Oli more, right? We should be chanting more. We were talking about this earlier, just before this session started. I think Diana was on with us, and we were talking about how it's been a while since we've gotten together to Oli. We would do a daily protocol ceremony during the aha mauna, or the mauna kea protocols that we would do daily. And actually we would gather 3 times a day to do this protocol, and we were chanting all the time. And at first people were, not accustomed to that, and kind of like, what they doing over there? And then, the crowd began to grow and grow. And the next thing you know, people walking by became accustomed to hearing that. And then when that stopped, people asked, oh, where, we don't hear the chanting anymore. And so that is kind of the goal, is for us to get back into hearing Oli all the time, and it not being something that's reserved for special occasions. So there are different types of styles, chanting styles, and then there are also techniques. And I think I want to start first with
right here for a second,
Yeah.
Luana. And as she begins to get us ready to know about the styles and techniques that are located in Oli, I wanted to share a phrase that we have when we chant. And the Hawaiian phrase is aheleo vale noe. It is just the voice. You know, there's only the voice to carry the chanter and the listener to the place and the reason for the chant. Hula has body, hands, facial expression, but chanting only has the voice. And so it is a special way, and as Luana will begin to share with us, how we use our voice in order to bring to people's minds what the chant is all about. Okay, back to you, Luana.
Mahalo, yes. That's such a great line, and you hear it in a lot of traditional Oli as well as contemporary Oli. People will include that line there, and it really, and I think it just captures that idea that it is just the voice. The voice is bringing you the ʻōlelo, the story, the history, the whole context of the chant is carried just through the voice. And it reminds me of, you know, the ʻōlelo noʻeau, I ka ʻōlelo no keola, I ka ʻōlelo no kamake, right? That speaks about the power of your words, but also the voice in itself. He mana ko kaleo, the voice has mana, or has this power to it, this spiritual power, right? That is attached to it as well. And so we were talking about that earlier as well. Even when we're speaking, even the tone of our voice, right, says a lot. And so when we Oli, we're conscious about all of these things. So there are different techniques that are used that help us to bring the emotion and the mana'o of the mele to life, so that those who are in the presence of the chanter, who are hearing the Oli being chanted, can feel that emotion. And this is all dictated by the text of the chant. So what is the chant talking about? Who is it talking about? This is how we decide which techniques to put in, even what style to use for that particular chant. So the text of the chant is very, very important. Now, in addition to that, we also want to use our spiritual intuition. And Hōkū and I were talking about that, you know, we also need to be very in tune with the unseen, right? Our kupuna, our ancestors who are guiding us, who are helping us in this process. And so that spiritual intuition is important when we are putting the ea, or the melody, I guess you could say, to the text, when we're adding in the techniques that we're going to use with the voice, and the style that we're going to do it in. So I want to introduce a few of those things, get you a little bit kama'aina, a little bit familiar with that, and then particularly the techniques that we will use in this Oli, which is the Oli Aloha. And then I'm just going to check to see we're on the right slide. Okay, so next slide, Hōkū, ke olu olu.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, great. Sorry, I have two things going on. So I have my computer and my phone, so trying to keep track of everything. So Oli techniques, I'm going to talk about 3 of them today. The first is ʻIʻi, or in some halo, in some hula practices, it is also called kuolo. Some people will define it a little bit different, but ʻIʻi or kuolo is kind of the basic words that are used for the vibrato sound in your voice. So that's the difference between right, which is just the sound, the vowel in Hawaiian, and which I think the second is more beautiful than the first. And so ʻIʻi is very important in all styles of chanting. We need to have that vibrato. either throughout the chant or in parts of the chant, depending on the style. How do we find our ʻIʻi? How do we come to be able to do the ʻIʻi with our voice? Well, practice, right? Listening, practicing. I have told my students, go drive on a bumpy road and go, your body moving up and down like that. Sometimes that helps them to kind of get the feeling, right, of the ʻIʻi. Yes, Hōkū?
I always tell my students, it's like the sound of a car that cannot start. And then you got it, then whoa, catch. Yeah, and then
yes,
the car goes.
Yeah, so we use all these different analogies to try to help people figure it out, because really ʻIʻi, you personally have to find it, right? You have to find it in your voice. I've even had students hold their throat and go up and down with their fingers, so that sometimes feeling it here in the throat will help, but also realizing that the voice comes from the noʻeau, comes from deep in the noʻeau as well. So some suggested. So, yeah, you love those analogies, Mark. Yeah, I would say, take the road to Kaupo, and then you'll just practice your vowels and you'll get it. You'll start to feel it in your voice. So every chant student, right, or student of chanting needs to practice and find it. And one of the best places is in the shower, because everybody sounds good in the shower. No shame, because nobody's there, right? You can just give them 100% in the shower with no inhibition. So practicing in the shower. Also, another place is go down the beach, right? So you have the ocean, the waves crashing, and you're not as shy, but also it'll force you to project your voice out, which can help you to bring that ʻIʻi out as well. And then at the third place that I say, this is where I like to practice my Oli, is in the car when I'm driving. Because again, windows are up, nobody can hear me, and I can hear myself as well, right? I hear how I sound, and I can play around with my voice. That's a great place to hoʻomāʻamaʻa to practice as well. So definitely have, yes, in the studio where it's soundproof. That's a good one. If I had a soundproof studio, I would definitely use it. Yeah, maikaʻi Diana. So getting maʻa to having your voice sound that way, bringing the ʻIʻi out of your voice, is something that we definitely want to have you practice. The second technique is called a heʻu. And in the recording of Oli Aloha, I use a heʻu in the Oli in the chant. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to do the heʻu when we're doing it together, because heʻu can be, it can take some time to learn and to really master being able to do that with your voice. For some people, it might come easily. For others, it might be a little more challenging. So we can do Oli Aloha with or without that heʻu. So the heʻu on the line, o ka'u no ia e anoʻi nei. That's where I have the heʻu in there. So it sounds like this. O ka'u no ia e anoʻi nei. Yeah. E anoʻi nei. You hear how the voice kind of goes up. And on the slide, I describe it as a hiccup sound, because I don't know how else to describe it. It is kind of like that. It's almost like there's an okina there. So you have to like stop the voice or cut the voice a little bit, but it is that rise of the voice. And it's very, it's distinct yet subtle, which is interesting. And it adds a lot of flavor to the mele. You can't just heʻu anywhere. You can't just be doing heʻu all over the place. Heʻu is something that you want to reserve for places in the chant that you might want to show emphasis. Another thing is, when you're looking at the text of an Oli, when the line is talking about someone of high rank, when it's talking about someone, something of the heavens, something that is above us or beyond us, whether it's spiritually or status, a heʻu is good, because the voice goes up. And so the voice going up signifies that that person or that thing is elevated. So it's interesting how we can use the techniques in our voice to also bring the mana'o of the chant to life. So He'u is there. We'll work on He'u. You can practice He'u. If you don't get the He'u, that's okay. You still can do the Oli without the He'u. And then the last thing I want to talk about for technique is where the voice is located is important as well. This is part of stylization, but it's also technique that can be used in the chant as well. So we can have, our voice can be at the back of the mouth, like the back of the throat, of the upper throat. It can be at the front of the mouth. Yeah, so this area here, it can be deep here in the throat, very glottal sounding, and it can also be up here, which we call nonolo, which is the nasal sounding. So I'll just kind of demonstrate a little bit, and you're going to be like, whoa, some of it might sound a little bit like, whoa, yeah. But when we use it in the mele, again, it adds those nuances that make it very beautiful and adds emotion to it. So in the voices at the front of the mouth, it sounds like this. Voice is very much at the front. And feel free to practice with me. You're muted, so you can jump in and practice and feel where the voice is. So from the front, bringing it to the back. Now the voice is here. Yeah, we can even go lower into the more glottal sounding, into the vocal box area as well, this part of our throat. So front, hear the different sound where it went deeper, right, with each one. So in the front, it's not as deep sounding, then it gets a little deeper. And then when we're down in the throat area, very glottal. Yeah, and I'll do a style of chanting that uses that type of voice. Now we can also bring the voice up. So from the front of the mouth, nasal, yeah, very nasal sounding. And when I do this with my students, they always are taken aback a little bit, like, oh, that's an interesting sound. But in certain parts of a chant or a certain kind of chant that comes in and it just really brings it to life. I've heard Taupori Tangaro do the nonolo style of chanting, and I think he's one of the best that I've heard do that nonolo style where it just sounds so beautiful. Not everybody sounds beautiful nasally, but he makes it sound very beautiful. That nonolo or nasal style is often used in love chants as well when you're expressing that emotion. Okay, so location of our voice, yeah, where it is, the he'u, that hiccup sound, and then the ʻiʻi or kuolo, which is the vibrato in our voice. And I think we are ready for the next slide, Hoku. Okay.
Do you see this one?
Great.
Yeah.
I do, yes, mahalo. Okay. So there are just four styles that I'm going to talk about today and demonstrate for you. There are many more styles of Oli, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to introduce some of the more common ones. And also, I think these four styles have a lot of variation, so you can hear the variation as well. So Oli, we refer to that as the most common style of chanting. It's probably what most people are familiar with. A lot of ʻIʻi in the chant, a lot of kuolo, that vibrato sound. There is some technique as well that is used in an Oli. And the Oli Aloha, which you're going to learn today, is done in this style. So I'll just do the first line so you can kind of hear the Oli. O naunai kahala me kalehu. So lots of ʻiʻi. The voice can go up and down, can fluctuate, right? And very common, what most people think about when they think of Hawaiian chanting. Now the Oli kaholo is more rhythmic, and hence the word kaholo, which is also the step in hula where we go 4 steps to the right and 4 steps to the left. And so there is a definite rhythm in the Oli kaholo, which is different than the Oli. So an example of an Oli kaholo is the chant, the Oli lei, which is done in the kaholo style. And it sounds like this. Kelei mai la o ka ulai ke kai e a o ka malama lama o ni I hau a mali e a mali e ua pa e ke inu ai la ke inu mai la na hala o na wei ke kai. No na we ka hala no puna e ka wahine no ka lua no I ki laue. So you hear the flow, right? You could almost clap along, right? Or my body starts to move to the rhythm of the mele. So there's a definite rhythm, and it's important when chanting an Oli kaholo in a group that everyone knows that rhythm, right? And as in timing is important. When you're doing the Oli kaholo. Still ʻiʻi, still vibrato, you still hear that in the voice, and a little bit of technique, a little bit of up and down in the voice, where the voice goes up and the voice goes down. The third style is very distinct. It is Oli kepa, and this is a garbled sound of chanting. Often this was taught, the kumu would have the haumana take a small pebble and put it on their tongue. And as they were chanting, they tried to keep that pebble from touching the roof of the mouth to really help to create this. Yeah, or swallow.
Don't swallow it.
You definitely don't want to swallow it, right? So it does take a lot of, focus, because you don't want it to go down your throat and choke. So having the pebble there resting on the tongue would help the haumana learn how to form the mouth to make that sound, that garbled sound in the Oli kepa. So I learned this Oli kepa, I think it was maybe 1989, 1990, from Kili'i Raichel, who was one of my kumu hula. And we did it, I think we did it one year for Kamehameha hula competition. So it sounds like this. Waga ulaga mugulaga o Hawaiʻi la wela kula da dia ulopanaga uagiga naga really deep, really in the throat, really I feel the voice is here, right? You also feel what would I say, the expanding here, right? In your muscles here, the lungs, really got to hold it in there, because the tendency is to want to push the voice out, but we need to keep it here. Now, why would a chant be chanted like this? Yeah, the reason for chanting a chant like this is often there were types of chant, or the text of the chant may talk about genealogy of an ali'i, a high-ranking ali'i, maybe an ali'i that was kapu, maybe there's kapu attached to it. So the chant would be done this way so that it could not be easily picked up and learned and mimicked, right? So kind of preserving the sanctity and the sacredness of the text of the mele. Sorry, Hoku, did I see your hand?
Yeah. No, that's exact. I just wanted to pop in, and sometimes people wonder why, because most of the other chants that we do, you understand the words clearly. And so this garbled, in your mouth, body kind of chanting is so that either there are long passages that have to be gotten through, so you say it so that you can get long passages through, but also often it is so it cannot be easily replicated, because our kupuna were trained to be able to listen to the chant once and repeat it. So their memorization skills and their listening skills were at a really high level. So they would be able to listen to it once and be able to replicate it. So sometimes, okay, I have a haha story. Okay, you know me, I always have some sort of haha story. Okay, this is the haha story. So when Kaniel was in high school, there was a high school chant competition. well, there was a high school hula competition, but chant was attached to it too. So she went, and I taught her, I trained her in doing an Oli Kepa. And I didn't go, but when she came home, I said, oh, how'd you do? Because I know not everybody does Oli Kepa. So I went, how'd you do? How'd you do? And she goes, oh, on her score sheet, the judge said she couldn't understand my chant, so I did it with. I went, no, that's the point. That's the point. So, you know, like Luana said, it's not commonly heard. So it's not the reason for it, and the way it is done is not commonly known. So we're telling you, if you hear garbled chant, it's okay.
Right. It's not like, oh, they're doing it wrong, or how come I can't understand the words?
They don't know they can't.
That's the point.
The point.
Yeah. And that's why it's important to have judges that are well versed in Oli, so they know what to expect in the different styles. Yeah. So in the last style, kawele. Kawele is what I love Oli Kepa because it really requires a lot of focus. Yeah. And also when I chant Oli Kepa, I feel very connected, very like grounded, very rooted when I chant that. Yeah, there's this really deep connection. So I love the Oli Kepa. But kawele is one of my favorites as well, because again, it's powerful. So kawele is a spoken style of chanting. So an example would be the chant, Oa ke anohoia papa hanau moku, right? So, Oa ke anohoia papa hanau moku, hanau o Hawaiʻi he moku, hanau o Maui he moku, right? So you can hear it clear. It's basically, I'm speaking it, but do you hear the difference between when I'm speaking and when I'm doing kawele? Because you can still hear technique in the kawele. Oa ke anohoia papa, you hear the voice, you hear the ʻIʻi in the voice, yeah? Oa ke anohoia papa hanau moku, hanau o Hawaiʻi he moku, hanau o Maui he moku. There's the up and down, there's flat spoken, but spoken with a lot of emotion and power that is again depicted by or dictated by the text, right, of the mele, right? So that mele, we're talking about Papa Hanau Moku is giving birth to the islands. And if you've ever given birth, you probably don't give birth quietly. Well, maybe some of you do, but even when you're quiet, there's this mana, right, that comes over us when we hanau, when we're giving birth, or if you've watched someone give birth, that whole process, that power is just beyond, right? Beyond anything else. It's almost indescribable. So she's giving birth. We're talking about her giving birth. We cannot be like, hanau o Hawaiʻi he moku, hanau o moku. Doesn't know how, right? It doesn't give the emotion. It doesn't bring the text to life. And even when we're chanting this, often you'll see the chanter standing and will actually aiha'a, will get down into that aiha'a position on all of the hanau. You'll see the hands to push down. Again, all of that emotion is coming through in the mele. And then it gets kind of, because in that mele, you know, Wakea, Sky Father, he's going back and forth between two wahine. And so you have the jealousy, the lilio pupuna lua o papa ya ho Hōkūlani Holt o papa noho ya Wakea. Ooh, the jealousy between the two wahine, and Papa goes back to Wakea, takes him away, has relations with him again, and gives birth to a whole bunch of other islands. So that comes out in the way that the chant is chanted. And kawele allows you to really use a lot of emotion, very animated. And so it's one of my favorites. Okay, so questions about, we'll pause for a minute, and any questions or anything you wanted me to go back to at this point. I saw some stuff in the chat box popping up. Yeah, awesome. Thank you for your comments. Yeah, Sam, your husband sounds better in the shower. Awesome. We all do.
He doesn't sound good either. He just doesn't believe that I sound good. I'm like, what are you talking about? When you're not here, it's awesome.
Yeah.
When you can hear it, somehow it changes.
I love it. I love it. So that's a great place to practice this Oli. So I think, Hōkū, I think now we'll have you talk a little bit about.
Start with this. So we're going to learn the Oli Aloha, and that'll be the next thing that Luana shares with us. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Oli itself, and Oli as in how do you use it perhaps in what the buzzwords are, which is protocol. What is that all about with Oli as well? So Oli serves as a very important purpose in a structured protocol between people or groups. There is Oli to request permission. There is Oli to grant permission. So this can be an individual or a group. There is Oli to introduce oneself as a guest. There is an Oli to welcome a guest into a space. There is Oli to introduce yourself through your family genealogy. There is Oli to introduce yourself through the places that are important to you or where you and your family are from. So the times that you can use Oli is almost any time when there is a formal or semi-formal interaction between us, between people and as well as places. So the Oli Aloha that Luana will be teaching you is a wonderful way to greet someone who is coming to see you. This Oli can be used whenever that occasion happens. In Hawaiian culture, when people have been away for a very long time or you haven't seen them for a very long time, and then you see them coming either to your house or to the place that you are, often an Oli would happen as you tell them, oh, I haven't seen you for such a long time, and your vision comes to me, and I am reminded of these places that we have visited together. Super wonderful, to have a way to say that rather than, hey, bro, how you stay? Right? A lovely way to say, I haven't seen you in such a long time. And when I see you, I am reminded of all of these things. So protocol, as we talked about earlier at our last session, can be formal or informal. And many of the informal ways that we use today are based in formal occasions. So Oli is often used in formal occasions, but even in informal occasions when you are with other people. Now, as we think about our Kīpaepae, this is Kīpaepae Foundation. As we think about our Kīpaepae, which is a way that we can welcome or release people into our space, these teachings that we will have will bring us to a greater understanding, and then how to do it, so we can participate together. It's a kako thing. Okay, Luana, I'm moving on.
All right, Hikino, Mahalo, Hōkū. So we're on slide number 8, and I'm going to introduce the chat to you. I want to tell you that at the top where it says click here for audio recording, so that word here is the link to it's a Loom video. So you'll see the words on the screen and you'll hear me chanting it, which is helpful when you're trying to learn, especially when you're trying to learn an Oli. I found that very helpful for my students to have the words and the chanting at the same time. So feel free to use that link to Ho'oma'ama'a to practice. A couple of things about the text of this Oli. We don't know who the author is. Mary Kawena Pukui is attributed to translating this Oli, but we don't know for sure if she was the actual author or if the author is someone else. So we don't know who the author is.
Okay, I'll pop in for a second. This is not unusual in Hawaiian mele or Hawaiian chants when you don't know the author, because these kind of mele were used freely and were given and practiced freely. They didn't have copyrights in those days that we do now. So if you see in chants or mele the word above that says traditional or author unknown, that is not unusual for us, because we didn't see it as we own these words or we own this mele. This mele belongs to all of us. Okay, back to you, Luana.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, sometimes a text could be taken, well, an Oli that is just done orally is heard and then just changed slightly, and now it's attributed to somebody else. So you'll find that in traditional mele as well. So with this Oli, when we look at the text from the way that it's written, we can tell that it is more contemporary, not post-contact, not pre-contact, definitely post-contact, and probably turn of the century because of the words that are used, the phrasing. The Hawaiian itself reveals a lot. The language itself reveals a lot. So a little bit of a more contemporary chant. It is a chant that is done frequently. Many halo do it. Many students of hula you'll hear doing it. But even beyond that, in schools, all kinds of different settings, I've heard this chant being done. And it is one that is widespread, has been shared widely and used widely. Which is nice because it also means that it's noa. There aren't kapu attached to this chant, which makes it appropriate to be used in many different contexts. It is a greeting chant. The most appropriate way to use it would be to greet someone. Yeah, and the words itself tells us that you are speaking to someone, as Hōkū described, someone you haven't seen, who's coming, who's visiting, who's coming to see you. And you're using, it uses metaphors in nature to describe the emotions felt when seeing this person or these people, once again. So if we look at it, we're gonna go through each line really quick for pronunciation and then right into the chanting part. So you'll stay muted. E ho'opili mai o nauna I ka hala. So you can repeat, Me ka lehua. He hale lehua no ia. E a no'i nei. So that okina there, a no'i nei. E li'a nei ho'i. O ka hiki mai. A hiki mai no o kou. A hiki pu no me ke aloha. And then ending with 3 aloha e. Aloha e, aloha e, aloha e. Okay, and you can see the English there. So talking about the hala and the lehua and how these plants and fragrances bring back memories, longing for their arrival, love comes with you, all of this beautiful stuff that is in the text of the mele. So you can look at the English translation as well. Now, we're doing it in the Oli style. What I want you to pay attention to is, where does my voice go up? Where does it go down? What are the little nuances that you hear? One way that you can learn Oli is to also have the text there with you and then make notes as you're listening to the instructor sharing with you. So I would do that when my kumu is chanting it. I would make arrows where the voice went up, or make an arrow where the voice went down, or I would do wiggly lines where they really held and gave a lot of ʻIʻi in the voice. So whatever works best for you. If you want to make little notes, you can do that as well. On the first line, we're gonna go down and up. Oh, na. Yeah, so the voice goes down and then up. O na I ka hala me kalehu. So you'll hear emphasis on that hu sound, yeah. In lehua, that u is going to be held a little bit longer than any other vowel in that line. Lots of ʻIʻi, and then that lehua, instead of lehua, we're going to go lehuai, I kind of a sound. And that is so that the mouth will come to a close at the end of the line. Oh, now naika hala me kalehu. And again, on that I, we hold it a little bit there. Yeah. Lehu. Okay. On the second line, we're going to start down and up on that word he. He halele huano yana kanoi. Okay, so we're not going up or down at the end of that line. We're going straight across. He halele huano yana kanoi. Did I do it like that on the recording? Or did I go down? I think I just went straight across, but when you listen to the recording, it might be a little different. Now, that's the other thing with Oli. You go by the emotion, your noʻeau, what you're feeling. So sometimes when you have to teach it and you have to remember where all those techniques are, sometimes it's a little hard. So I think I went straight across, but again, we'll refer back to the recording for that. So for now, we'll do it that way. He halele wano yana kanoe. I think I went down. No, like that. Not so much down, but just holding it a little bit at the end. So let's try the two lines, o nauna and he hale together. And yes, I'm teaching it fast because of timing. When we come back for the second session, we'll start with this Oli, practicing this Oli before we introduce the next Oli, okay? And you'll have time to ho'oma'ama'a as well. So line 1 and line 2. Oya. O nauna I ka hala me kalehu ai. He halele wano yana kanoe. Okay, now listen. O kauno ia e ano inei. You heard that he'u? Yeah, you heard that he'u? Now you can try it. And if you don't quite master that, that's okay. We can just chant it regular as well. O kauno ia e ano inei. Yeah, or o kauno ia e ano inei. Just end on the nei, right? But try see if you can get the voice to do that he'u. O kauno ia e ano inei. Yeah. Okay, so let's try o kaunoia e ano ine. O kaunoia e ano ine. E li ane io kahikimai. Now here, right after we finish that, o kaunoia e ano inei, there's a little pause. I want you to take a deep breath because the next two lines are done without a breath. So far we've been able to breathe at the end of each line, but when we come to e li'a, that line, we are going to hold the breath all the way until we finish the word oko in the next line. So it sounds like this. O kauno ia e ano ine. Breathe. E li ane iho iyo ka hikimai no oko. Hikimai no oko. There's a little bit of a crescendo there, right? Because we're building up the breath right into that hikimai. E li ane iho iyo ka hikimai no oko. Hikimai no oko. I see your mouths moving. I saw everybody's posture went up like this. Great. Okay, so let's try it from o kaunoia all the way to hikimai no oko, and then I'll introduce the last two lines. Okay, o kaunoia oia. O kaunoia e ano ine. E li ane ho iyo ka hikimai no oko. My kai. I can feel you guys chanting. My kai. Now, after that, hikimai no oko, we're going to go into the next line. Hikimai no oko. Hiki pu no me ke aloha. So the voice drops on that ha. Okay. Hiki pu no me ke aloha. So there we're going to emphasize with a lot of ʻIʻi in the voice. Okay. So from hikimai no oko into the next line. Hikimai no oko. Hiki pu no me ke aloha. Great. Now we're going to breathe there on that. After that word aloha, breathe in. Okay. The first two aloha e, we're going to do in one breath. Then we're going to pause and take a breath. And we're going to give them on that last aloha e. Yeah, give it all. Okay. So it's going to sound like this. Aloha e, aloha e, aloha e. And the voice tapers off and the mouth closes. Okay. So let's try it from hiki pu no me ke aloha, from that line. Oia. Hiki pu no me ke aloha. Breathe. Aloha e, aloha e. Breathe. Aloha e. Maikai from the top. Okay, you're like, wait, how the first line go? We just roll with it. We'll roll with it together. Okay, so you want to, when you oli, you want to be sitting up nice and tall or standing. The voice comes from your noʻeau. You also want your lungs expanded to be able to hold that breath when you need to. We're going to take it from the top. I'll do o nauna, just to give you the pitch, and then we'll start together. O nauna pa. O nauna I ka hala me ka lehu ai. He halele wano yana kanoi. O kauno ia e ano ine. Breathe. E li ane iho iyo ka hikimai no oko. Breathe. Ahiki puno me ke aloha. Deep breath. Aloha e, aloha e. Aloha e. Ooh. Maikai loa. Questions that you may have. Okay, that means you're processing, which is good, which is a good thing. Yeah. Yes. So on that slide, Kili'i, where it says click here for audio recording, that's the hyperlink to the recording. Yeah. Yeah. Mahalo. Mahalo.
Yeah, and then it'll be available to you when we upload this to Joyce, and then you can download it to you.
Yes, yes. So Joyce will send out the link to the Google Slides, as well as the recording. Now, on slide number 10, this is the recording of our first session, the first Kīpaepae series that we did, topic 1, Introduction to Protocol. So if you missed that and you want to watch it, it's about just under an hour long. Feel free to watch the video so that you get that first topic, you become acquainted with that. And then on slide number 11, these are the next topics coming up. So we will do another topic 2 Oli, and we will be introducing a second Oli. So we'll be practicing this Oli Aloha, and we'll be introducing a second Oli. And then topic 3 will be Lavena, which is 3 different sessions. Haʻi ʻōlelo, how we do speeches in Hawaiian. Pilina, relationship building. And then ʻōlelo noʻeau, Hawaiian proverbs that are often used in Kīpaepae. Okay. And then, of course, we are also planning for the summer intensive learning sessions, and we will let you know about that as well. Hōkū?
Yes. So mahalo to all of you for your time with us. Here on this slide has our contact email addresses if you would like to contact Luana or myself. The slides will be available. We'll download it, upload it to Joyce right after this is finished, and then she will be able to distribute it after that. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. I think we have come to the Haina ia maiana kapuana. Yeah, kaho'otu, right?
Yes, we have.
We are over. Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, all of you who are here today and tried your voice at this mele, this Oli. We hope you will continue practicing because everything gets better with practice. And we are here. The link will be there for you to be able to listen, read the words, practice, read the words. So mahalo anui. Back to you, Joyce.
We do have a folder, a Google folder that will have all of the resources, all of the recordings all together. And so I will give you a link to that, and as well as just the individual recording and Hōkūlani and Luana's slides. So thank you all for being here. We will see you at the next session. Take care.
Yes, mahalo. Ahui ho.
Mahalo.
Where's that recording?